My brother confessed a secret that shattered our family forever. The phone rang deep into the night, its sharp sound cutting through the silence of my room. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was a wrong number, but something in me knew I had to pick up. When I pressed the phone to my ear, I heard my brother's voice. It was shaky, uneven, like he had been crying or holding back tears for hours. He didn't greet me the way he usually did. Instead, there was a long pause, and then he whispered my name as if saying it out loud was already too heavy for him. My heart began to pound, sensing that whatever he was about to say would not be ordinary. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer right away. I could hear his breathing, fast and shallow, like he was struggling to find the courage to speak. Finally, he said, "I need to tell you something." His voice cracked on the last word, and I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. The way he said it made me feel like the ground beneath me was about to shift. This wasn't a casual call. This was something that had been eating at him for a long time, and now it was spilling out. He started slowly, almost as if he was afraid the walls around me might hear. "I've been keeping something from you," he said. "Something from all of us." His words were heavy, each one dragging me deeper into a place I didn't want to go. I tried to interrupt to tell him he didn't have to explain right now, but he cut me off. "No," he said firmly, though his voice still trembled. "You need to hear this. I can't keep it inside anymore." I leaned back against the headboard, clutching the phone tighter. My brother had always been the steady one, the one who carried himself with calm even when things around us fell apart. To hear him like this, broken, afraid, was unsettling in a way I couldn't describe. It made me realize that whatever he was about to confess wasn't small. It was something that had the power to change everything we thought we knew about our family. He hesitated again, and I could almost picture him on the other end of the line, pacing the floor, running his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was nervous. "I should have told you years ago," he said softly. "But I thought I could protect you by keeping it hidden. I thought if I carried it alone, you wouldn't have to suffer the way I did." His words made my chest tighten. Protect me from what? What could be so terrible that he had carried it in silence all this time? I whispered his name, urging him to go on, but part of me wanted him to stop. There was a strange fear building inside me, a fear that once I heard his secret, I could never go back to the way things were. He seemed to sense my hesitation because his voice softened even more. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, "but the truth has been eating me alive, and if I don't tell you now, I don't think I'll ever be able to." The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the faint sound of a clock ticking in the background on his end, each second dragging out the tension. I wanted to scream at him to just say it, to rip the bandage off, but I also wanted to hang up and pretend this call had never happened. My hands were shaking, and I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for the words that would break the world I thought I knew. Finally, he spoke again, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about us, about our family, about everything we thought was true." His words sent a chill down my spine. I thought of our parents, of the stories they had told us, of the life we had lived together. What could possibly be so big, so dangerous that it would make him sound like this? I tried to steady my voice as I asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, I heard him take a deep breath, the kind you take before stepping into something you can't turn back from. "I've carried this for too long," he said, "and it's destroying me. I can't keep pretending anymore." His words were filled with pain, but also with a strange kind of relief, as if speaking them out loud was already lifting a weight from his shoulders. Then came the words that froze me in place, the ones that would echo in my mind long after the call ended. His voice cracked, but he forced the words out anyway. "I can't carry this alone anymore. You deserve to know the truth." The silence after his words stretched so long that I thought the call had dropped. I whispered his name again, but when he finally spoke, his voice was steadier, though still heavy with something I couldn't name. "There's more to our family than you know," he said. My stomach tightened instantly. He wasn't talking about small details or forgotten stories. This was something bigger, something that had been buried deep. I could hear the weight of it pressing down on him, and now it was pressing down on me too. I tried to laugh it off to ease the tension, but the sound died in my throat when he didn't join me. "I'm serious," he said firmly. "The history we grew up believing, the stories Mom and Dad told us, it wasn't the whole truth." My heart skipped a beat. Our parents had always been careful about the past, telling us only what they wanted us to know. I had never questioned it before. But now, hearing my brother's voice crack under the strain, I realized there had always been gaps I had ignored. He began to explain slowly, as if each word cost him something. They kept a secret from us, for decades, something they swore we would never find out. My mind raced, trying to imagine what it could be. Was it about money? About someone they had wronged? Or was it something darker, something that could tear apart the foundation of who we thought we were? The possibilities made my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. I asked him why he was telling me now, after all these years. His answer chilled me. "Because it's starting to surface again. I can't stop it anymore. And if you don't know the truth, you won't be ready when it comes for us." His words made my skin prickle. This wasn't just about the past. It was about the present, about something that was still alive, still dangerous. He told me that our parents had lived another life before the one we knew, a life filled with choices they had buried, choices that had consequences reaching far beyond what we could see. "They weren't who they said they were," he whispered. "They built everything we know on top of a lie." My hands trembled as I clutched the phone tighter, my mind spinning with disbelief. Could it really be true? Had our entire childhood been built on a story that wasn't real? I thought back to the little things, the way our parents avoided certain questions, the way they changed the subject when old names or places came up. I had always assumed it was just painful memories, things they didn't want to relive. But now, with my brother's words echoing in my ear, I realized it might have been something far more deliberate. They hadn't been protecting themselves from pain. They had been protecting us from the truth. My brother's voice grew heavier as he continued. They weren't just hiding details. They were hiding people, connections, choices that could destroy everything if they ever came to light. His words made me shiver. I wanted to demand answers, to force him to tell me everything at once, but I could hear the strain in his voice. He was unraveling slowly, piece by piece, and I knew I had to let him go at his own pace. The room around me felt smaller, the shadows deeper. I realized that once I heard the full truth, there would be no going back. The life I thought I knew, the family I thought I had, would never look the same again. My brother had cracked open the first layer of a secret that had been buried for decades, and I could already feel the ground shifting beneath me. I whispered that I needed him to tell me everything, no matter how painful it was. He hesitated, and for a moment I thought he might hang up. But then he sighed, a sound filled with years of exhaustion. "You deserve to know," he said. "But once you hear it, you'll never see them the same way again." His words cut deep, leaving me both terrified and desperate for the truth. Then, in a voice that was almost broken, he gave me the first crack in the story I thought I knew. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of a lifetime of lies. "Our family isn't what you think it is." His voice grew heavier as he began to speak, and I could tell he was pulling memories from a place he had tried to bury. "This happened before you were born," he said slowly, as if each word carried the weight of years. My chest tightened. I had always assumed our family's story began with me and him, with the life we grew up in, but now I realized there was a whole chapter that had been erased. He paused, and I could hear the faint sound of him swallowing hard, like he was bracing himself for the storm he was about to unleash. He told me about a night long ago, when our parents had been younger, living in a different town, surrounded by people I had never met. "They weren't the same people back then," he said. "They were part of something bigger, something they never wanted us to know about." His words made my skin prickle. I tried to imagine them as young adults, caught up in a world I couldn't picture, but the image felt foreign, almost impossible. He described how our parents had been close to a group of people who weren't just friends. They were bound together by secrets, by choices that tied them in ways that couldn't easily be broken. "It wasn't just about family," he whispered. "It was about loyalty, about debts, about promises that couldn't be undone." My heart pounded as I realized this wasn't just a story about mistakes. This was about something dangerous, something that had shaped the very foundation of who we were. I asked him what had happened, but he hesitated, his voice faltering. "There was an event," he said finally. "Something that changed everything. It wasn't just a fight or an argument, it was bigger than that. It was the kind of thing that leaves scars you can't see but that never heal." His words sent a chill down my spine. I could hear the pain in his voice, as though even speaking about it was reopening wounds that had never closed. He told me that our parents had made a choice that night, one that would follow them for the rest of their lives. They thought they were protecting us, he said, but in reality they were protecting themselves too. They buried the truth so deep that we were never supposed to find it. My hands trembled as I listened, realizing that the life I thought I knew had been built on top of a lie. The more he spoke, the more I felt the walls of my childhood memories begin to crack. Every bedtime story, every family photo, every holiday we had shared, it all felt different now, like shadows had been hiding in the corners all along. I wanted to stop him, to tell him I didn't want to hear anymore, but I couldn't. I needed to know what had happened, even if it broke me. He described the fear that had followed our parents after that night, how they had lived with the constant worry that the past would catch up to them. They thought they could outrun it, he said. But the truth has a way of finding you, no matter how far you go. His words echoed in my mind, and I realized that maybe that was why he was telling me now, because the truth was finally catching up to us. I asked him who else knew, but he shook his head. "Not many," he said. "Most of the people who were there are gone now. But the ones who remain, they haven't forgotten. And they haven't forgiven." His voice dropped lower, almost to a whisper, and I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't just about the past. It was about the present, about dangers that might still be lurking in the shadows. The silence between us grew heavier, filled with the weight of everything he wasn't saying. I could feel the fear in his voice, the way it trembled when he tried to hold it steady. He wasn't just telling me a story, he was warning me. Whatever had happened that night had shaped our family's fate. And now it was shaping mine too. Finally, he took a deep breath, his voice breaking as he spoke the words that would haunt me long after the call ended. It all started the night everything went wrong. He told me to meet him the next day, saying there was something I needed to see with my own eyes. When I arrived, he didn't waste time with small talk. He pulled a worn envelope from his pocket and slid it across the table toward me. My hands shook as I opened it, and inside was a photograph so old the edges had curled and the colors had begun to fade. At first, I smiled faintly, recognizing our parents standing together, younger, their faces lit with a happiness I had rarely seen. But then my eyes caught on the third figure, standing close beside them, someone I had never seen before. The stranger in the photograph looked comfortable, almost woven into the scene, as though they belonged there. Their arm brushed against my father's, their smile mirrored my mother's, and the closeness between them was undeniable. I stared at the face, trying to place it, but no memory surfaced. It was like staring at a ghost, familiar in some way, yet completely unknown. My brother watched me carefully, his expression tight, as though he was waiting for the moment I realized what this meant. I turned the photo over, hoping for some clue, and that's when I saw the date written neatly in ink. My breath caught. The year didn't match anything I knew about our parents' timeline. According to their stories, they should have been living somewhere else entirely at that time, building the life we had always believed was the beginning of our family. But here was proof that they had been somewhere else, with someone else living a life they had never told us about. I looked up at my brother, my voice trembling as I asked who the person was. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back, his eyes clouded with something between anger and sorrow. "That's the part they never wanted us to know," he said quietly. "That's the piece of the story they erased." His words made my stomach twist. If this person had been so close to our parents, why had they been erased from every story, every memory, every trace of our family's history? The photograph felt heavier in my hands the longer I held it. I thought back to the diary entries he had already shared, the hints of betrayal, the warnings about secrets buried deep. This photo wasn't just a forgotten memory, it was evidence. Evidence that our parents had lived another life, one they had deliberately hidden from us. And the date on the back proved it wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. I asked again, more firmly this time, who the stranger was. My brother's jaw tightened, and he finally whispered. They were closer to our parents than anyone else, closer than even we've ever been allowed to know. His words sent a chill through me. If that was true, then why had they been erased? What had happened that was so terrible it required rewriting our entire family history? The silence between us grew heavy, filled with questions I didn't know how to ask. My brother's eyes flicked back to the photograph, and I could see the conflict in his face. He wanted to tell me more, but something held him back, as though speaking the truth out loud would make it too real, too dangerous. I realized then that this wasn't just about uncovering the past. It was about surviving it. I studied the stranger's face again, searching for any resemblance, any clue that might connect them to us. The longer I looked, the more unsettling it became. There was something in their eyes, something in the way they stood beside our parents, that felt too familiar to ignore. It was as though I was staring at a missing piece of myself, a reflection I had never known existed. My brother finally leaned forward, his voice low and unsteady. They weren't just a friend, he said. They weren't just someone passing through. They were part of us, part of everything we thought we knew. His words made my chest tighten, my pulse racing with fear and curiosity. Then he looked me straight in the eye, his voice breaking as he spoke the words that would change everything. That person in the photo, they were part of our family once. My brother's eyes shifted away from mine as if the weight of what he was about to say was too heavy to deliver while looking directly at me. His hands trembled slightly, and I could hear the uneven rhythm of his breathing. There's something else, he whispered, his voice breaking. I leaned forward, my heart pounding, sensing that this was the moment everything would change. He hesitated, then finally said, We weren't the only ones. The words hung in the air, confusing and sharp, and I felt my stomach twist as I tried to understand what he meant. I asked him to explain, my voice barely steady, but he shook his head as if the truth itself was too dangerous to speak aloud. There was another, he said finally. Another child. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment I thought I had misheard him. Another child? The idea seemed impossible, absurd even. Our parents had always told us it was just the two of us, that we were their only children. But the look in my brother's eyes told me he wasn't lying. He pulled out another folded piece of paper, worn and creased from being handled too many times. It was a birth record, faded but still legible. The name was unfamiliar, but the last name was ours. My hands shook as I held it, staring at the proof that someone else had once existed in the space we thought belonged only to us. They erased them, my brother said softly. They erased them from everything, our family, our history, even our memories. I tried to remember if there had ever been hints, small cracks in the story our parents told us. And suddenly, fragments came back. Moments when our parents avoided certain questions. Times when they grew quiet at the mention of certain years. I had always thought it was grief, or maybe just painful memories they didn't want to revisit. But now I realized it had been something else entirely. They hadn't been protecting themselves from sadness. They had been protecting us from the truth. My brother's voice grew heavier as he explained. They were older than us. They were here before you, before me. But something happened. Something so terrible that our parents decided to erase them completely. They never wanted us to know. His words sent a chill through me. I couldn't imagine what could be so devastating that it would force our parents to erase their own child from existence. I asked him what had happened, but he shook his head. I don't know everything, he admitted. I only know pieces. But I know they were betrayed. And I know that betrayal nearly destroyed our family. His words echoed in my mind, and I thought of the photograph, of the stranger standing so close to our parents. Could that have been them? Could the erased sibling be the missing face in the picture? The silence between us grew heavier, filled with questions I didn't know how to ask. My brother's eyes were filled with guilt, as though he had carried this knowledge for years, unable to share it. I should have told you sooner, he said. But I was afraid. Afraid of what it would do to you. Afraid of what it would mean for us. His voice cracked, and I realized he wasn't just afraid of the truth. He was afraid of what it meant for the future. I stared at the birth record again, my hands trembling. The name on the paper felt like a ghost, someone who had lived and breathed, someone who had been part of us. and yet someone I had never known. The thought made my chest ache. How could our parents have hidden something so enormous? How could they have erased an entire life as if it had never existed? My brother leaned closer, his voice low and urgent. This is why I called you. This is why I couldn't keep it inside anymore. Because the past isn't gone. It's coming back. And if we don't face it, it will destroy us too. His words made my skin prickle. The idea that the erased sibling story wasn't finished, that it was still reaching into our lives now, filled me with dread. Finally, he looked me straight in the eye, his voice breaking as he spoke the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about our family. We weren't just two. There was a third. My brother's voice grew heavier, as though each word was dragging him deeper into memories he wished he could forget. He told me that the sibling we never knew hadn't simply vanished or been erased without reason. Their disappearance had been the result of betrayal, an act so cruel and intimate that it had torn the family apart in ways we were never meant to see. It wasn't an accident, he said, his voice trembling. They were betrayed by someone close, someone who should have protected them. The words made my chest tighten, and suddenly the silence of the room felt suffocating. I tried to imagine what it must have been like, to grow up in a family where trust was shattered from the inside. My brother explained that our parents had once been bound tightly to a circle of people, a group that lived by loyalty and secrecy. But loyalty is fragile, and one person's choice to turn against them had set everything spiraling. It wasn't an outsider, he whispered. It was someone they trusted more than anyone else. The thought made my skin prickle. Betrayal from within always cuts the deepest. He described how the sibling had discovered something they weren't supposed to know, a truth that threatened the balance of everything our parents had built. Instead of protecting them, someone close had used that knowledge against them. They were cornered, my brother said. They had no choice but to disappear. And our parents? They chose silence over truth. His words painted a picture of fear and desperation, of a family forced to bury its own wounds. I asked him who it was, who could have done something so unforgivable. But he shook his head. I can't tell you yet, he said. Not until you're ready to hear it. His refusal only made the fear grow inside me. If the betrayer had been close enough to destroy one sibling, what would stop them from coming for us? The thought made me grip the phone tighter, my pulse racing. My brother's voice cracked as he spoke of the aftermath. Our parents never recovered from it. They carried the guilt, the shame, the fear. That's why they built a new life, why they erased the past. They thought if they buried it deep enough, it would never touch us. But secrets don't stay buried forever. They rot, they fester, and eventually they rise to the surface. And now, they were rising through him, through me. The betrayal wasn't just a wound. It was a fracture that had split our family in two. One side lived in silence, pretending the past had never happened. The other side had been erased, left to vanish into shadows. And in the middle of it all was the betrayer, the one who had set it all in motion, the one who had forced our parents to choose lies over truth. I thought of the photograph, of the stranger standing so close to our parents, and wondered if that had been the sibling. Had they been smiling in that moment, unaware of the knife waiting in the shadows? Or had they already known, already felt the betrayal creeping closer? The questions gnawed at me, each one heavier than the last. My brother's voice grew softer, almost breaking. They trusted the wrong person, he said. And it cost them everything. That's why we never knew them. That's why their name was erased. Because betrayal doesn't just take one person, it takes everyone connected to them. His words echoed in my mind, and I realized that the betrayal wasn't just history. It was a living shadow, still reaching for us. The silence stretched, and I could hear the weight of his breathing on the other end of the line. He was holding something back, something he didn't want to say but couldn't keep hidden forever. Finally, he whispered, "The past isn't gone. The one who betrayed them. They're still out there." Then his voice dropped to a chilling certainty, the words that froze me in place and made my blood run cold. "And the one who betrayed them is still alive." I searched through the old boxes my brother had pulled from the back of the closet, each one filled with scraps of our family's past, photographs, receipts, and yellowed documents that smelled faintly of dust and time. At first, it all seemed ordinary, the kind of clutter every family collects. But then, tucked beneath a stack of brittle newspapers, I found a bundle of envelopes tied together with a faded ribbon. My hands trembled as I pulled them free. The handwriting on the front was unfamiliar, sharp and deliberate, but the last name was ours. My heart skipped a beat. These weren't just letters. They were messages from the sibling we had never known. I untied the ribbon carefully, as though the letters might crumble if I moved too quickly. The first page I unfolded was filled with words that bled with pain. "You left me," it began, the ink pressed so hard into the paper that it had nearly torn through. The voice on the page was raw, filled with anger and sorrow. They wrote of nights spent alone, of watching from the shadows as our parents built a new life without them. Each sentence was a wound, a reminder of the betrayal that had driven them away. I could almost hear their voice, trembling with rage, echoing across the years. The second letter was even harder to read. It wasn't just anger, it was heartbreak. They wrote about how it felt to be erased, to know that their existence had been scrubbed from the family's story. "You pretended I never existed," the words read. "But I am still here. I will always be here." My chest tightened as I read, realizing that this wasn't just a sibling lost to time. This was someone who had lived with the unbearable weight of abandonment, someone who had been forced to carry the pain of being forgotten. I read on, each letter darker than the last. They described watching from a distance, seeing our parents smile and laugh as though nothing had happened. They wrote about the bitterness that grew inside them, the way it consumed every thought, every breath. You chose them over me, one letter said. You chose silence over truth. The words cut deep, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't just a sibling's grief, it was a vow. A declaration that they would never forgive what had been done to them. My brother sat silently across from me as I read, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the letters as though he had already memorized every word. I asked him how long he had known about them, but he didn't answer. Instead, he looked away, his jaw tight, as though the guilt of keeping this secret was too much to bear. I realized then that he had carried this knowledge for years, maybe even his whole life, and now he was finally letting me share the burden. The letters grew more unsettling as I continued. They weren't just filled with pain, they were filled with intent. The sibling wrote about reclaiming what had been stolen from them, about taking back the life that had been denied. I will not be erased, one letter declared. I will not be forgotten. The words were sharp, almost threatening, and I felt a shiver run through me. This wasn't just a cry for help. It was a promise. I could feel the anger in their words, the way it had hardened over time into something unbreakable. They wrote about debts unpaid, about secrets buried, about the lies our parents had told to protect themselves. You thought you could bury me, one letter said. But the truth always rises. My hands shook as I read, the weight of their fury pressing down on me. It was as though the letters themselves carried the heat of their rage, burning through the years to reach me now. The final letter in the bundle was the most chilling of all. It was shorter than the others, written with a steady hand that carried no hesitation. I will return, it said. And when I do, I will take back what is mine. The words were underlined twice, the ink darker, as though they had pressed the pen into the paper with all the force of their anger. My breath caught as I realized what it meant. This wasn't just a sibling lost to time. This was someone who had sworn to come back, someone who believed the story wasn't over. I folded the letters back into the envelope, my hands trembling. The room felt colder now, the shadows deeper, as though the words on the page had summoned something into the air around us. My brother finally spoke, his voice low and unsteady. Now you understand, he said. This isn't just about the past. It's about what's coming. His words made my chest tighten, and I realized that the danger wasn't just a memory. It was a promise waiting to be fulfilled. As I stared at the bundle of letters, the final words echoed in my mind, chilling and unshakable. They swore they would return one day to take back what was theirs. The knock at the door came just after midnight, sharp and deliberate, echoing through the quiet house like a warning. I froze. The bundle of letters still spread across the table, their words burning in my mind. My brother had just left hours earlier, his confession still raw in my chest, and now here was someone else, arriving at the very moment when the past felt closer than ever. I hesitated before opening the door, but curiosity, and fear, pulled me forward. When I opened it, a stranger stood in the dim light of the porch. Their face was lined with age, but their eyes were sharp, searching mine as though they already knew who I was. You don't know me, they said, their voice low and steady, but I knew your family. I knew the truth they tried to bury. My breath caught and I gripped the doorframe, suddenly aware that the secrets I had just uncovered weren't secrets at all, not to everyone. I asked who they were, but they didn't answer directly. Instead, they stepped closer, lowering their voice as if the night itself might be listening. Your brother has told you something, hasn't he? They said. The words made my stomach twist. How could they know? I hadn't told anyone, hadn't even had time to process it myself. Yet here was this stranger, speaking as though they had been waiting for this moment, as though they had been watching. They went on, their words cutting through the silence like a blade. He told you about the other child, didn't he? About the betrayal? My chest tightened. I nodded slowly, unsure if I should admit it, but the stranger's expression told me they already knew. Then you should know this, they continued. What he told you isn't the truth. He's protecting himself. He always has. The air seemed to thicken around me. My brother's trembling voice replayed in my mind, his confession spilling out like a wound he could no longer hide. But now this stranger was telling me it was a lie, that the story I had begun to piece together was already fractured. I asked them what they meant, my voice shaking, and they leaned in closer, their eyes burning with conviction. Your brother wasn't just a witness to what happened. He was part of it. He had a hand in the betrayal. The words hit me like a blow. My brother, the one who had carried me through every hardship, the one who had sworn he was protecting me. Could he really have been the one who destroyed our family from within? My mind rebelled against the thought, but the stranger's certainty made it impossible to dismiss. He's been lying to you, they said. He's been lying for years. I demanded proof, but the stranger only shook their head. The proof is in the pieces you've already found, they said. The letters, the photograph, the silence in your parents' stories. Look closer and you'll see the cracks. He's been shaping the truth to protect himself. Not you. Their words made my skin prickle, and suddenly the letters on the table behind me felt heavier, darker, as though they carried more than just anger. They carried accusation. I wanted to slam the door, to shut out the stranger and their poisonous words, but part of me couldn't, because deep down, I knew there had been gaps in my brother's story, moments when his voice faltered, when his eyes refused to meet mine. Could those have been the cracks the stranger was pointing to? Or was this just another manipulation, another layer of lies meant to twist me further away from the truth? The stranger stepped back into the shadows, their voice dropping to a whisper. You'll have to decide who to believe. But remember this, your brother isn't innocent. He never was. Then they turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway, the night air cold against my skin. My heart pounding with doubt. I closed the door slowly, the echo of their words still ringing in my ears. My brother's confession, the letters, the photograph, all of it was tangled now, impossible to separate. One of them was lying. One of them was twisting the truth to protect themselves. But which one? My chest tightened as the thought settled in, heavy and unshakable. Someone is lying. But who? I spent hours turning the letters over in my hands, the words of our lost sibling echoing in my mind, when something strange caught my eye. Beneath the false bottom of the box where the letters had been hidden, there was another layer, papers folded tightly, pressed flat as if they had been meant to stay buried forever. My pulse quickened as I pulled them free. These weren't just scraps of memory. They were official documents, stamped and signed, carrying the weight of truth that could no longer be denied. The first was a property deed, the ink faded but still legible. It listed a house in another city, one I had never heard our parents mention. The date on the deed was years before I was born, and the name attached to it wasn't my father's or my mother's. It was the name of the sibling we had only just discovered. My breath caught. This wasn't just a forgotten connection. This was proof that our parents had built an entire life around them, a life they had erased from every story they ever told us. I unfolded another document, a journal filled with entries written in my mother's handwriting. The words were careful, deliberate, describing days spent in that house, meals shared, laughter that filled the rooms. She wrote about the sibling as though they were the center of her world, the reason for everything. My chest tightened as I realized that before me, before my brother, there had been another life, another child who had once been everything to them. The receipts told the same story. Purchases for furniture, clothing, even school supplies, all tied to the sibling's name. Each slip of paper was a fragment of a life lived fully, a life nurtured and cared for. And then suddenly it had all been cut off. The trail ended abruptly, as though someone had decided to erase not just the child, but the entire world built around them. I sat back, the document spread out before me, my hands trembling. The truth was undeniable now. Our parents hadn't just hidden this sibling. They had built a life for them, invested in them, loved them, and then, for reasons I still couldn't understand, they had erased it all. The betrayal wasn't just against the sibling, it was against us too. They had rewritten our family's story, leaving us to live in the shadow of a truth we were never meant to find. My brother watched me silently, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the papers. He didn't need to say anything. The evidence spoke louder than words. I could see the guilt in his expression, the weight of years spent knowing pieces of this truth but never daring to reveal it. Now, with the documents laid bare, there was no turning back. The past had clawed its way into the present, and it demanded to be seen. I thought of the photograph, of the stranger standing so close to our parents, and suddenly it all made sense. That wasn't just a friend or a forgotten acquaintance. That was the sibling. That was the child they had once built everything around. The realization made my stomach twist. How could they have erased someone who had once been the very center of their lives? The journals revealed more than just love, they revealed fear. My mother's words grew darker toward the end, filled with worry about choices made, about debts unpaid, about shadows that seemed to follow them. She wrote about betrayal, about trust broken, about the night everything changed. And then the entry stopped. No explanation, no closure, just silence. I gathered the papers back into a stack, my hands trembling. The weight of them was unbearable, heavier than any secret I had ever carried. These weren't just documents. They were proof of a life stolen, proof of a truth buried so deep it was never meant to be uncovered. And now it was mine to carry. As I looked at my brother, the words formed in my mind, chilling and undeniable. They didn't just hide them. They built everything for them first. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The documents, the letters, the photograph, they were all swirling in my head, demanding answers. So I went back to my brother, clutching the evidence in my hands like weapons. When I laid them out in front of him, his face went pale. He tried to keep his composure, but I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. I told you the truth, he said quickly, almost too quickly. His voice was firm, but there was a tremor beneath it, a crack in the armor he had built around himself. I pressed him harder, asking why the dates didn't match, why the journals spoke of a life built around the sibling he claimed had been erased. He shifted in his chair, his hands tightening into fists. You don't understand, he muttered. They lied to us. They lied to both of us. But the words didn't sound convincing anymore. They sounded rehearsed, like a line he had told himself so many times he almost believed it. Almost. I reminded him of the stranger who had come to my door, the one who claimed he wasn't innocent. His reaction was sharp, too sharp. You can't trust them, he snapped, his voice rising. They're twisting everything. They want to turn you against me. But the anger in his tone felt less like defense and more like panic. It was as if the walls he had built around his story were starting to crumble, and he was scrambling to hold them up. I leaned closer, my voice low, demanding to know what he wasn't telling me. He looked away, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the floor. I told you everything I could, he said. But the hesitation in his voice betrayed him. He hadn't told me everything. He had told me just enough to keep me close, just enough to keep me from digging deeper. And now, with the truth spread out between us, his silence was louder than any words. The tension in the room grew unbearable. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on us, the secrets clawing their way to the surface. My brother's hands trembled as he tried to gather the papers, as if hiding them again would make the truth disappear. But I pulled them back, refusing to let him bury them. You're not telling me everything, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You're holding something back. His eyes finally met mine, and for a moment, I saw something raw flicker there. Fear, guilt, maybe even shame. "I'm trying to protect you," he whispered. The words should have comforted me, but instead they made my stomach twist. Protect me from what? From the truth? Or from himself? The more he insisted, the more I realized his story wasn't whole. It was fractured, patched together with half-truths and omissions. I thought of the letters, of the siblings' vow to return, of the stranger's warning that my brother wasn't innocent. The pieces didn't fit together, no matter how hard I tried to force them. And the harder I pushed, the more cracks appeared in his story. He was hiding something that could change everything. And the worst part was, I didn't know if he was hiding it to protect me, or to protect himself. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. My brother's breathing was uneven, his eyes darting as though he was trapped. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the person who had always been my anchor. But doubt had already taken root, and it was spreading fast. Every word he spoke now felt like a mask, every pause like a secret he couldn't bear to reveal. I stood, the papers clutched tightly in my hands, my heart pounding. "If you want me to believe you, then tell me everything," I demanded. But he just shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin line. The silence that followed was louder than any confession. It was the silence of someone who had chosen what to hide, even if it meant breaking me in the process. As I walked away, the weight of his words echoed in my mind. He said he was protecting me, but the cracks in his story told me otherwise. And for the first time, I let the thought take shape, chilling and undeniable. What if he's protecting himself, not me? The pieces had been scattered for so long. Letters filled with rage, photographs that didn't match the stories, documents proving a life erased, and now, as I laid them all out before me, the picture began to take shape. My brother's confession had been the spark, but it was incomplete, carefully trimmed to protect something he didn't want me to see. The stranger's warning echoed in my mind, and for the first time I allowed myself to believe it. My brother hadn't told me everything. He had told me just enough to keep me from digging too deep. I went back through the letters, reading them again with new eyes. The siblings' words weren't just filled with anger at our parents. They spoke of betrayal from someone closer, someone they trusted. "You stood by and let it happen," one line read. At first I thought it was meant for our parents, but now I wasn't so sure. The phrasing was too personal, too sharp. It sounded like it had been written for someone who had been there, someone who had played a role in their downfall. The journals from our mother added another layer. She wrote about arguments in the house, about voices raised in the night, about a fracture between her children that she couldn't mend. "I fear one will destroy the other," she had written in a shaky hand. I had skimmed over it before, assuming it was a metaphor for the pain of betrayal. But now with everything I knew, it read differently. It wasn't metaphor, it was warning. I confronted my brother again, this time with the letters in my hand. I read the lines aloud, watching his face carefully. His jaw tightened, his eyes flicked away, and for the first time, he didn't try to deny it outright. "You don't understand what it was like," he muttered. "You don't know what they made me do." His words sent a chill through me. He wasn't denying involvement, he was excusing it. I pressed harder, demanding to know what he meant. His voice cracked as he admitted that he had been there the night everything went wrong. He had seen it unfold, had stood in the middle of it, and yet he had never told me. "I thought I could protect you by keeping it buried," he said, his hands trembling. "But I can't carry it anymore." His confession was breaking apart, spilling pieces of the truth he had hidden for years. The realization hit me like a wave. He hadn't just been a bystander. He hadn't just been the one to inherit the burden of silence. He had been part of it. Whether by choice or by force, he had played a role in the betrayal that had erased our sibling from existence. And all these years, he had let me believe he was only a witness, only a victim of the same lies. The weight of it pressed down on me, heavier than anything I had carried before. My brother, the one I had trusted, the one who had sworn he was protecting me, had been protecting himself all along. Every crack in his story, every hesitation, every half-truth, it all made sense now. He wasn't just hiding the past. He was hiding his part in it. I thought of the stranger's words, of the way they had looked me in the eye and told me he wasn't innocent. I had wanted to dismiss it, to believe in the brother who had always been my anchor. But now, with the evidence spread before me and his silence confirming what I already knew, I couldn't deny it any longer. The truth was fractured, but one piece was clear. He had been involved. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper as I stared at him. He looked smaller now, weighed down by guilt, his eyes pleading for me to understand. But I couldn't, not yet. The betrayal wasn't just in the past anymore, it was sitting right in front of me, breathing, breaking, begging for forgiveness. And as the silence stretched between us, the final thought settled in my mind, sharp and undeniable. He wasn't just a witness, he was part of it. The house was silent, but inside me there was nothing but noise, questions, doubts, and the weight of choices I never wanted to make. The photograph lay on the table, the stranger's face staring back at me, a ghost of the sibling who had been erased. Beside it, the letters sat in their bundle, each word a wound that refused to heal. My brother's voice still echoed in my mind, his trembling confession, his insistence that he had only been trying to protect me. But now I knew better. He hadn't just been protecting me, he had been protecting himself. I sat there for hours, staring at the evidence, feeling the walls of the life I thought I knew closing in. If I exposed him, if I told the truth, it would destroy what little remained of our family. The world would see him not as the brother who had carried me through every hardship, but as the one who had betrayed his own blood. And yet, if I kept the secret buried, I would be complicit in the lie. I would be carrying the same silence that had poisoned our parents, the same silence that had erased a life. The weight of the decision pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. I thought of the siblings' words in the letters, their vow to return, their promise to reclaim what had been stolen. They had been betrayed once, erased once. If I stayed silent, wasn't I betraying them again? But if I spoke, if I exposed everything, I would be betraying my brother, the only family I had left. It was a choice with no mercy, no clean ending. I looked at my brother, sitting across from me, his face pale, his eyes filled with guilt. He didn't beg for forgiveness, didn't try to defend himself anymore. He just sat there waiting as though he already knew what I would decide. And in that silence, I realized something. There was no right choice. There was only the choice I could live with. Slowly, I gathered the photograph and the letters, tucking them back into the envelope. I didn't destroy them. I couldn't. They were proof of the truth, proof of the cracks in our family that could never be mended. But I didn't expose him either. Not yet. The world wasn't ready for this story, and maybe I wasn't ready to tell it. For now, the truth would remain mine alone, a burden I would carry in silence. My brother watched me, his eyes searching mine, but I gave him nothing. No forgiveness, no condemnation. Just silence. He seemed to understand, his shoulders sagging as though the weight of his guilt had finally settled fully on him. We both knew this wasn't over. Secrets like these don't stay buried forever. They wait, they fester, and eventually, they demand to be faced. I placed the envelope in a drawer, locking it away, but the act gave me no peace. The truth wasn't gone. It was alive, pulsing in the shadows, waiting for the day it would break free. I knew it would haunt me, that every time I looked at my brother, I would see not just the man who had raised me, but the boy who had betrayed our sibling. And I knew that one day I would have to decide again, silence or exposure, loyalty or justice. The house felt colder as I stood, the silence pressing in around me. I thought of our parents, of the lies they had carried, of the cracks they had tried to hide. They had chosen silence and it had destroyed them. Now I was standing in the same place, holding the same choice, and I wondered if I would suffer the same fate. I looked once more at my brother, then at the drawer where the truth now rested. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of mine. The past had left me with scars I hadn't chosen, but the future was still unwritten. And whether I chose silence or truth, I knew one thing. I would not let the story end the way theirs had. The cracks in our family told a story, and now it's mine to finish.